he shall come in peacefully. This means to secure the land as a stronghold. He will be sent by the Kittem, and his object will be to protect King Abdullah's house, and therefore he will be standing on the Straits of Moab across from where the tribes of Israel are. And here on the Straits of Moab is where he is going to have his army. It also tells you that he will come upon to attack the enemy, that he's not just planning this to be a peaceful thing. He's the judge of the quarrel, looking good to the world as he's coming in for this, but he's got something else in mind. And when it says flatteries, it means the promise to distribute wealth and the plunder. So from this war, there's supposed to be a wealth and a plunder, and he has promised to distribute it, and that this is the way that he has gotten his army, who will be the people from Tyre and Sidon, who are going to be upon the plain. We understand that because Ezekiel tells us there are these people from Tyre and Sidon, and they are in the pit. When it goes on in verse 11:22, it says, with the arms of a flood shall be overthrown before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. The arms means the military forces. The flood means the overflowing of the waters to drown, and that they are overthrown. When it says before him, it means before the face of a man, but it can also be a term for cherubim, or in this case was the anointed cherub that covereth. So before his face, he is going to see overflowing waters, and he is going to see these people drown. And it also says the people will be broken. That means crushed. Yea, also the prince or ruler of the covenant. This means the confederacy. We see the confederacy in Psalms 83, and it begins with Edom, Moab, and Amon. So when it tells us in Daniel that the prince Edom, Moab, and the chief of Amon, Daniel is one telling us that at the time of the end there's going to be one chief over Edom, Moab, and Amon, and that would be King Abdullah. And Daniel says that they will fall from his hand. It's not what most people think as far as the prophecies. What they've been telling us today is that he's going to go after a lot of countries, but when it says these escape from his hand, they're thinking that this is a country that he's going after. No, it's a country that he's there to protect, and he's come up as a peacekeeping force as the war is taking place, in men's view, as just being Syria who is attacking. But there is more than just Syria. There is a confederate there that is spoken of in Psalms 83, and that has to do with Edom, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarenes, Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher is joined with them. They are Hopan of the children of Lot. So it's the people of Asher, but also in the 1 Qum War Scroll, it's telling us that there's the troops of the Kittem of Asher, and it may be that the people of Asher are part of the troops of the Kittem, because what we're finding out is that people who are mercenaries are being bought for a price, and they can go from ISIS or ISIL onto being the other terrorists who are coming against Assad of the rebels just because of money. So whoever wanted to buy them for a price, they could do so, and if the EU wanted to do so, they could. Also, we understand that there's supposed to be a rock cut out of the mountain that is going to come against the 10 toes of the image that Daniel saw. The 10 toes are the Roman Empire at the time of the end, the Kittem, that will be joined to be 10 toes, and people have pointed out that it should be an eastern and western leg, one representing Europe and the other representing a lot of countries that are predominantly Muslim. Oh, this is not a Muslim war, however. This is a war that goes back to the countries that are around Israel and how they've hated Israel and come against his covenant all along. So this is just an end-time continuation of God's cause against them. So when it tells us that the arms of the flood, in 11:22, with the arms of a flood shall be overthrown before him, this is telling us something also, because in Psalms 83, it tells us that this war is going to be like unto the war with Sisera, and the war with Sisera was one where Sisera had a huge army, and they got all stuck in the mud, and God won. Barak was the leader, Song of Deborah, all these things taking place. everybody died except Sisera, who was able to come up out of the mud. And Sisera also means the covering. It's the same word that's used for the ark and the covering. And here we have the anointed cherub that covereth, who is going to be part of this. Scripture tells us that he is going to lose all of his military forces, where it says the arms, that means the military forces. Flood means overflowing waters to drown and overthrown. Before him means before the man, who's also the cherub. It says broken means they'll be crushed. When it says also the prince of the covenant was the confederacy, and Psalms 83 is speaking of the covenant of the confederacy. It also means to come against God's covenant, and God's covenant was a land grant to Abraham and to Jacob of the promise of the tribes. And these people, according to Psalms 83, are trying to take the land away from Israel. So all of these things are also mentioned within the 1 QM War Scroll. He's talking about God who created the expanse of the heavens, the source of the rivulets, and the into the wilderness and circle of the plain. Also talks about the rift of the sea, and all of this is part of what we're hearing within Psalms 83, Psalm 60, and Psalms 105, all referring to the same thing, as they're all speaking of Edom, Moab, Philistia, and Assyria, also coming against Israel. In Psalms 83, it says, the envy of Ephraim shall depart, from the harass of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, Judah shall not vex Ephraim. This is the tribes of Israel that was also spoken of in Ezekiel, that would return to the valley next to God's holy mountain. My people, my holy mountain. This is the tribes of Israel having come from the nations. And in the 1 QM War Scroll, it says pretty much the same thing. What we're working with is 1 QM, the War Scroll, column 1, divided into 9 parts. The first part I've labeled Edom, Moab, and Philistia, and it reads, the first attack shall be when Edom, Moab, and the sons of Amon, the Philistia, and the troops of the Kittem of Asher. Having to do with tribes as the parties of the war, it speaks of the sons of Levi, the sons of Judah, and those of Benjamin. Those exiled to the wilderness shall fight. The sons of light return from the wilderness of the peoples to camp in the wilderness of Jerusalem. The sons of light here are the tribes, and what they're speaking of, those who are in Israel, would be Levi, Judah, and Benjamin. And the sons of light that return from the wilderness of the peoples would be the 10 tribes of Israel. Number 3 has to do with the Kittem, that says, and I read as follows. Then after the battle they shall go up from the place, and the king of the Kittem shall enter into Egypt. In his time he shall go forth with great wrath to do battle against the kings of the north, and in his anger he shall. So Psalms 83 tells you it's the tabernacle of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarenes, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre, Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, that's Gaza, and and also Asher that's joined with them, helping the children of Lot. We understand that the children of Lot are part of the Jordan, but these people are coming against the children of Esau. That's why the bodies of Asher are on the sides of the pit, Scripture tells us, and they are around the people of Esau, because they, according to the Scripture, they were to be pushed to the border, the children of Esau, and this would be the border of Israel, where the Allenby Pass, this is where the border of Israel is, going into the Jordan. So Obadiah tells us how the people of Edom are fooled. They're foolish men who are supposed to be wise and teamen, and the people who eat their bread, that is the people of this confederacy, are actually going to be against them. They're the people of Edom, according to Scripture, are the people who Obadiah says who have the nest on the mount. This is the Mount of Jerusalem. They have and the King of Syria is supposed to say, my hand has reached the nest of the riches. So he's going after the riches of Syria. He's supposed to come down and go back in the way that he had done. And it says he's so proud of all that he's done at night, and in the morning he is gone. Also at night he's telling us that none of them made a peep or lifted a wing, and this Actually, it seems to be speaking of gases or nerve gas or some kind of gas, which, of course, Assad is famous for, because any other kind of war, they're going to speak against him, they're going to come against him, they're going to do something. So the people in the street were already killed before this time. At the end of the war, it tells you 7 women will come to 1 man, disgraced because they've lost their husbands. Only the unrighteous were supposed to die within this war, and apparently it will be the men who will be in the streets, and that's why they will die from this nerve gas. So as the nest of the riches it's talking about, my hand has reached the nest of the riches, that according to Obadiah is the nest of the children of Esau, who are upon the rock that is cleft, that is the dome over the rock, and this is where the treasures of Esau are, and they will be taking their treasures down off the mount and heading for the border. Apparently they believe from the confederation that they had at Teman that they're going to be able to go across the border with their treasures and wind up at Abdullah's house, but no, the people of Asher are going to be there surrounding them to cut them off. What's in it for Asher? The booty, the plunder, the spoil. They're there for the spoil, but they will be dead on the sides of the pit, says Ezekiel. So, when Daniel sang, these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Amon. He is right. Abdullah is the chief of Amon, and he is of Edom, and the chief of Edom and Moab. He is of Amon himself. He is he has a descendant of Amalekite. So this is part of the destruction that's getting ready to take place. So concerning Edom, it says, an ambassador will go among the nations. Let us rise up against her in battle. Of Judah, they're going to, it says, they of the south will possess the mount. We would think that would be Judah, but south also means the Negeb. And speaking of Ephraim, it goes on and talks about these things. Ezekiel says, I will execute judgments on Moab. Ammon will not be remembered. Philistia will be destroyed, remnant. Asher is there with all of her companies. Their graves around about him, that's Esau, all of them slain, fallen by the sword. They're on the side of the pit, not in the pit, because they're not next to it. So then it goes on in Psalm 60, speaking of over Edom I will cast my shoe, Moab is my washpot. There's going to be a flood. It's going to be a flash flood. A lot of the minor prophets talk about it. A flash flood. There's going to be mud. It's going to be like the days of Sisera. Flash flood from the top of the mountains, a storm. There also is going to be the rock of God that is going to descend the line to the plummet. It will break open the pits of hell. Jesus talked about his church. Upon this rock I will build my church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. The pit will be opened, and these people will fall in the pit.